Welcome to Small Practice Support Information Session number 42. In this Law Society of Ireland recording, Maurice Cullen of Leadership Management Ireland talks to Justin Purcell about effective personal management.
So it's the Small Practice Information 42. I'm here with Maurice Cullen from Leadership Management International. Today we'll be discussing effective personal management. So Maurice, you're very welcome. So I'll just introduce Maurice. Maurice has 25 years extensive experience working in senior marketing roles across multiple industries. And in 2016, Maurice decided to follow his passion for helping people develop their potential and has embarked on a new chapter with Leadership Management International. So Maurice, you're very welcome to join us today. We're very interested and intrigued about what you're going to be talking to us about. So,
Justin, thanks a million. And listen, thank you very much for inviting me today. Delighted to be here with you all this afternoon. So as Justin said, Maurice Cullen from Leadership Management International. Leadership Management International is part of an international grouping based out of the States. And we're a performance improvement business, basically. We work with people to help them develop to their potential. So as I say, based in Texas, we operate currently in about 80 countries, and probably more than 2 million people have gone through our programs and our process. So we're quite established around the world. And really, I suppose what we do is we help people identify the building blocks and the behavior patterns that are going to help them to be more successful. And when I talk about being more successful, I mean whatever that means, for each of us, because it means something different for us all. But I suppose fundamentally, it allows people to take back control and maybe to be less stressed. So it's that kind of thing. So we look to work with people to help them develop the habits that are going to deliver for them. And I suppose that's what I'd like everyone who's tuned into this call this afternoon to have a think about for the next half hour or so as we go through this, is what habits are they currently in, and are there any tweaks to those habits that they could make that would actually make things a little bit better for them and help them to be more successful. I'm going to be talking for about 20 minutes or so. I've agreed with Justin, and then we're going to have some kind of questions and discussion after that. So if you have any thoughts as we go through this, maybe put them into the chat box and we'll pick them up at the end of the session. So I'm just going to share a screen with you, if that's okay. So let me put that up. And I want to just talk to you about a concept which we call the slight edge, which is the idea that simple disciplines repeated over time will create success. And the flip side of that, I suppose, is simple mistakes, if we repeat them over time, will create failure. So it's all about the habits that we have, that we do day in, day out, and what comes out of that. And so this is what I want you to think about a little bit. Are there simple disciplines that you could employ which would actually help you to be more successful? And I suppose just in talking about that, I want to just kind of emphasize that really what we're talking about are small changes to the habits that we have. Most of the habits that we have are going to be really beneficial and are going to work well for us and are going to help us get through our daily lives. But all of us probably have built in a couple of habits that we'd probably be a little bit less proud of, something that really probably gets in the way. And Robin Sharma, the guy who wrote The Monkey Sold His Ferrari, he talks about small daily improvements always leading to exceptional results over time. Darren Hardy, the author, talks about a daily routine built on good habits and disciplines separates the most successful among us from everybody else. It's the routine that's exceptionally powerful. And listen, we can go all the way back to Aristotle. When was Aristotle? Got it on the spot now, maybe 300 or 400 BC, was he? But Aristotle talked about, we are what we repeatedly do. So that's the question for you this afternoon. What is it that you repeatedly do? Because it is what you repeatedly do that defines you. There's an old kind of a truism, or we make our habits, and then our habits make or break us. So that's what I want us to think about a little bit today: is what are our habits, and what is that we repeatedly do? And I suppose the starting point on this then is to talk about time, isn't it? Because how do we spend our time? How we spend our time is how we spend our day. And time is the great common denominator, I think, for us all, because we all have different backgrounds, different environments, different levels of support. But actually, time is something that is common to us all. We all have 24 hours in a day, and we all have 168 hours in a week. And I'm sure if you're like me, you've often looked at people and you've said, you look with envy at some people. You say, how does he or she get all that done? Where do they find the time? And actually the thing is that they don't find time, but they actually plan, prioritize, and schedule their time. That's how they achieve, that much more than we might think otherwise. So what I want you to do now, I suppose, is just to think a little bit about how we're spending our day. And I want to introduce you to a thing called the Eisenhower Matrix, which is a kind of a time management matrix, which might be well known to some of you or not to others. And it's attributed to Dwight Eisenhower, who apparently once said, "What's urgent is seldom important, and what's important is seldom urgent." And it's developed into this kind of, box matrix, which you can see in front of you. I just want to talk you through this for a moment. And I'd like each of you to think about where you spend your time, where you spend your day. So it gives a kind of a binary version of the world. Things are either urgent or they're not urgent, and things are either important or they're non-important. Okay, so it's an oversimplification. The world isn't obviously that simple, but it's an oversimplification, but it's a useful simplification. So it's useful to think in this way. So a lot of people would tell me, I work in the top left box. I work on stuff that's important to me, and it's always urgent. That's just the way that we operate. Things are always urgent. But if you're in that top left box, it's reactive. You are in reactive mode because by definition, you have a timeline, a deadline that's getting to you. So you're never going to be able to put your best foot forward because you always have that timeline hanging over you. The top right box is a much more interest, and that's where you're working on things that are important to you before they become urgent, okay? And if you get to them before they become urgent, you're actually working in a proactive fashion. You have a much better chance of getting a better result because you have time. You've got the time to think it through, to run through a few iterations possibly, and know where you are. Bottom left is an interesting quadrant, isn't it? This is when you're working on things that actually aren't important for yourself, but they are urgent. And all of us end up in this box for some periods of each day or week because something comes into our inbox. It's labeled urgent. It might well be urgent for somebody else, but maybe it's not urgent for us. And this is the kind of the busy fool box, I suppose. This is where you're busy getting stuff done. It's just that it's the wrong stuff. And this can also be called the zone of seduction down here. And the reason it's called the zone of seduction is it can often feel good down here because you're actually getting through activity and therefore you're feeling good because you're getting through stuff. Or else maybe you're helping somebody else. You're helping someone else, something that's urgent or important for them. It's not important for you. It's important for them. At the end of it, they thank you. They say, "Morris, listen, thanks a million for the help. That was great." I feel good about myself because I've achieved something. Someone's feeling happy. That's thanking me. The other person goes away, they're happy, I'm happy, we're all happy. The problem is I'm not doing the work I'm supposed to be doing. So it's the zone of seduction, okay? And the other one then is the escape zone. This is where you're working stuff non-urgent and non-important. And I suppose the thinking behind that is that, this is really where you go to take a break. So if you've been doing something where you've been highly active and you've been concentrating, it's been intensive for a while, maybe you choose to take some time out and go into this escape piece. So think about where you're currently spending your time in terms of this kind of a frame. And really what I want you to be saying, I want you to be saying no to the busyness, okay? Say no to the busy for busy's sake. You need to think about what's important to you and making sure that you're working on that. So I want you to be doing more up on the top right, okay? Getting to important items before they become urgent. And I suppose the interesting thing is that when you actively take a decision to shift to that top right box where you've identified what's important and then you start to work on it before it becomes urgent. When you start working up there, you find that there's less to do in the top left. Because sometimes when I talk to people, they say it's impossible to get out of the top left. Things are always urgent. Well, actually, it's the planning and the prioritization and working the top right will mean you have less to do in that quadrant one. And of course, down the bottom right then is a choice. How much time you spend there is a choice. And the big thing I think when you're taking a break or you're kind of going through routine tasks is that you understand how much time you spend there. But we probably all spend a little bit of time there. So given that we're talking about getting to these important things, what are the important things that we should be doing? And just to introduce you to the Pareto Principle, which I'm sure you've all probably heard of before, sometimes called the 80-20 rule, which basically says that for all of us in whatever role we have, there's probably 20% of our activities generating 80% of our result. And the flip side of that is probably 80% of what we're doing is giving us only 20% of our output. So I want us to have a think about that and apply that to our own roles and understand what are our high payoff activities. So those 20% of things that we do that deliver 80% of our results, do we know what they are? Do we know what those 20% of activities are? And the way I would encourage you to think about this perhaps is to think about them, defining them as the activities that are most directly responsible for earning your income, okay? And this is a kind of a definition I think that works for all of us. And if you're actually clear about what is it that actually earns my income, they're your high payoff activities. And when you think them through, then it's, what is their priority and how much time should you be spending on each? Because you may identify a number of high payoff activities. Some of them mightn't take that much effort. It might just be really important you do them, but it doesn't necessarily eat up that much of your day. Some other things will take more time. But this question is one I want to pause on for a moment on high payoff activities, because I want you to really think about what are your high payoff activities. It's a deceptively simple question, isn't it? It's the kind of question that a 12-year-old child might ask you, and you might even be slightly affronted that someone is asking you this question. But actually, most people struggle a little bit to answer this question, which is interesting. I've been kind of working this business for about 5 or 6 years at this stage, and I was quite taken aback when I got involved by the people that I was working with, who are all successful people in their own rights. How few of them could answer this question. What are their high payoff activities? What actually delivers for them in their role? And so much so that when I work with clients, I often work with clients over 8 or 10 weeks. When I work with clients now, it typically takes them 3 weeks to define their high payoff activities. Now, isn't that fascinating? Because if you don't know your high payoff activities, how can you be focused? Okay. And don't forget, my take on the world is that the successful person is just the average person focused. But if you don't know what your high payoff activities are, you can't be focused. So a challenge I would put to everybody on this call this afternoon is that when we hang up from this, I'd love you to take out a pen and paper and try and write down your high payoff activities. And if you struggle with that task, I would suggest that's a really important area for you to look at. And not only is it important, but you can really it will deliver for you in terms of improving your focus and improving your delivery. You should know your high payoff activities without having to think about them. They should be sitting right at the front of your brain so that you know as you start your working day, what are the high payoff things I need to be working on. And just as a by the by, you probably don't have any more than 5. With any people I work with, they typically can narrow it down to 5 either activities or groups of activities, and that are actually the things that deliver for them in their role. So high payoff activities, please take that as a takeout from this afternoon, that you're going to have a think about that and have a look at that. And the other side of that coin is low payoff activities, okay? And low payoff activities is something that is always going to be with us, okay? Every role has low payoff activities, and it's not that you can get rid of them, they're just there. But I think it's important to recognize them as low payoff activities so you don't spend too much time on them. And of course, the less time you spend on low payoff activities, the more time you have to spend on your high payoff activities. And broadly speaking, I define low payoff activities that are as activities that are worth less than the value of your time. Okay, it's just simply put, activities worth less than the value of your time. And again, a question for you, I'm asking you lots of questions this afternoon, is how much time do you spend on these type of activities? And if you spend a significant amount of time on them, which I would guess you might, what can you do about that? Are there ways that you can eliminate them totally? Possibly there is, possibly there isn't. Or are there ways that you can simplify? Or if you're in a practice with a few more people there, maybe you could delegate some of these activities. So what are these, and what can you do about them? So, the other thing, I suppose, when you're thinking about low payoff activities, ideally think about recurring activities, because often these are, typically these would be administrative and stuff like that, those kind of tasks. So what are the things that come in maybe weekly or monthly that you need to get through? And then how can you go about containing these so that they don't eat into too much of your own valuable time? So again, a question for you is, do you know what your low payoff activities are? And again, I would really encourage you to have a think about that. Get out a pen and paper and write down your low payoff activities. Because at the end of that, then what you will have is you will have a list of your high payoff activities and you will have a list of your low payoff activities. And when you have both of those crystal clear in your head, it helps you take the business decisions that you need to take to stay on track and to stay focused. Because basically what happens then is you essentially have a kind of to use a medical term, kind of a triage, don't you? So when you look at your inbox, you triage that inbox. Is this a high payoff activity? If it is, great. I want to focus my time and energy on that and give it my best shot. If it's a low payoff activity, I want to minimize the time and effort I spend on this. So you triage all the work that comes your way and split it into high payoff, which is delivering on everything that you're about, your own agenda, and the low payoff, just the stuff that you need to get done. The other thing I think I'd say there is, when it comes to scheduling your high payoff and your low payoff, know your own energy cycle. Like if you're a morning person, put your high payoff activities into the morning and put your low payoff activities into the afternoon. If you're the kind of person who needs 3 cups of coffee in the morning and doesn't wake up till 11 o'clock, well, then put your low payoff activities into the first thing in the morning and schedule your high payoff activities, from mid-morning on to lunchtime or whatever. So that's a kind of an important way to kind of look at that and think about that. So just being clear on what those activities are. And I suppose, I've used that word activities there a bit, and I won't labor the point, but just make sure that what you're writing down are activities and not responsibilities, because activities are things that you can measure and check up on yourself and know that you're doing. And if you leave it as just responsibilities, it can be a little bit vague in your head. So now that we're clear on our high payoff and our low payoff, what do we do with that? And I suppose it leads us on to the two most powerful time savers that are available to any of us, and they are the ideas of planning and goal setting. So look, clearly we all plan and clearly we all goal set, but the question is, can you do it a little bit better? And you can guess what my answer is going to be to that. Yes, you can do it a little bit better, because we can all do these things a little bit better. So the more time we spend planning and goal setting, better we're going to what we can achieve in any day or any week or any month. And I suppose just to get us thinking about this, I wanted just to share with you JP Morgan, the financier, obviously. I just wanted to share with you his guaranteed formula for success. So he was good enough to share this with the world, okay? And I don't know if any of you know this or not. I know Justin, you had a pre-sneak of this. And I'd ask you for a drum roll now if we had any sound effects, but I suppose we don't. So JP Morgan's guaranteed formula of success was, every morning, write a list of important things that need to be done that day and do them. Okay? Now, how simple obviously is this? So like we're kind of smirking and laughing as we read it, but there's such a truth in this, is write a list of important things that need to be done that day and do them. And this is the kind of the application gap that we often have, is that we know what we need to do, but we end up doing something different. So there's a gap in our application between what we know and what we do. So this idea of just being really clear about what needs to get done, which are typically all based around your high payoff activities and getting them done in the day. So what can we take out of that? I think the first thing to take out of that is the idea of maybe taking what I call 10 magic minutes, okay? Take 10 minutes at the start of your day to take your to-do list and to prioritize it, and maybe take 2 items out of your to-do list and prioritize those and schedule a time to get them done that day, and then do them in the scheduled time, okay? So if you have a task, you say, I'm going to do that between 10 and 10:30 tomorrow morning, then you guard that time in your calendar in the same way that you would guard, say, an external meeting with a client or something. And so, the way that if you have an external meeting in your diary, you tend to, as I say, safeguard that time. You don't let anyone in, you don't let any distractions in. But actually, if you have a kind of a meeting with yourself, you often just let it slip. So move that switch in your head, hang on to that time. So you use 10 minutes every morning to schedule your tasks for that day. And I would suggest that you do that before you even turn on your computer. Before you even turn on your laptop, just sit down with a pen and paper. It's in your head. You know what needs to get done. And actually, sometimes by the time you turn on your computer, you're distracted by your inbox and so forth. So just pick those. they're kind of daily goals. We should be thinking about goals in terms of weekly goals, monthly goals, and so forth. And what I'd like you to think about also is setting goals across your life. And not just, some of us are quite good at setting goals in our business life and probably poor at setting them in a broader sense. And I just want to introduce you to this idea of the wheel of life, which basically takes your life and splits it into 6 different categories: financial and career, family and home, mental and educational, spiritual and ethical, physical and health, and social and cultural. And what could be really useful is to actually think about your goals in terms of these 6 boxes. Now, obviously, these kind of sections, they overlap a little bit. I'm not suggesting that these things are standalone, but clearly they overlap. But again, it's a simplification, which is helpful to think about. So that every week or every month, you would look at this. Is there anything this month, for instance, I want to do to push on my own goals in any of these areas? And they don't all have to be big, profound, important things. They can be just small things. So you might decide, do you know what? I'm going to set a goal of, say you have a brother or sister or something. You might say, I'm going to set a goal of ringing my brother, every week or every 2 weeks or every month, whatever makes sense for you. It could just be small things like these, but small activities in these other sectors can have a profound impact on your life, and they can actually really help you in terms of fulfillment. So it's a really important thing to think about. So think about a broader way of setting goals. And when you set broader goals, it helps you in every aspect of your life, including your business life. So question for you: have you thought about what you want to achieve this month, this quarter, this year? If not, it might be worth your while just doing that. And I'm going to finish now in a second, but I suppose just to say to you that when you think through those goals, the next question is, what do you do with those? And a goal without a plan is just a wish. It's just a thought in your head, isn't it? So you need to find a way of structuring and disciplining yourself to actually achieve that goal. You need to put a plan in place. So in LMI, obviously, we have an approach that does this. But look, go on to Google and you'll find 100 approaches there as well. Find something that works for you, that will actually give you a structure and a discipline that allows you to achieve the goal that you want. So the successful person is the average person focused, okay? And the way that you focus is by identifying and being self-aware of how you're spending your time, by knowing what your high payoff activities are, knowing what your low payoff activities are, planning, setting goals, okay? And when you do that, you take away all the excuses. A lot of us give ourselves excuses. Oh, I can't do it because it's just the way the industry is, or it's the pandemic, or what's the whatever. But if you just get back to the basics, and it's real basic stuff I'm talking about, isn't it? It's the absolute simplest stuff. If you get back to the basics and focus on focusing yourself on those things, you'll get the results that you need. So look, I'm going to stop now because I want to make sure that we have enough time to share a few thoughts or questions, and I'm happy to do that.
That's great, Maurice. It's really insightful stuff. So I suppose the question I have for you is, how do you keep it going week in, week out, month to month, year to year, to put in the structure in place all of what you're proposing in theory sounds great, but I'm busy. I've got people ringing me. I've got emails coming in. I've got, kids, family. I've got lots going on. It's just, and now I'm working from home. How do I put a structure on it? Or
yeah, look, I suppose that's the $500 question, isn't it? It's how do we do that? It's about instilling new habits. And the only way you can get rid of bad habits, if you like, is by instilling new habits. Within LMI, we work people over 8 or 12 weeks, which is about the length of time that you need to instill new habits. But I suppose the thing about it is pick something and stick with it, and that's what I'd say. Justin, to anybody, is you maybe just take one item and just stick with it, and just hold yourself to account. Sometimes it's the simplest thing. Like if you identify your high payoff activities, put a poster note up on the top of your laptop screen saying, focus on high payoff activities. That just prompts you to stay focused. So it's whatever tricks that you can find yourself that actually just keep you focused. That's what you're trying to do. And you need to keep doing it for a length of time until it becomes a habit and a discipline.
How do you deal with when, you make your lists at the start of the day and there's 10, 12 things and you itemize off the first top two, the most important, and you focus and you try to get into that second quadrant, but you don't get to everything every day.
I
That
think
can give you a sort of a, maybe not a great feeling at the end of it. So
I think
what's a good trick around it?
I think that's what happens to lots of people. They get just disheartened, don't they? Because they're not getting to what they want to do. And I'd always encourage people to move away from having a to-do list to having a do list. Okay, I know that sounds a bit pedantic and daft, but I used to have a to-do list which is about 3 kind of A4 pages, and of course you were always disheartened because you never got through it. But if you just pick 2 a day and just really discipline yourself to get them done, you actually feel a bit better at the end of the day because you've taken some control back, haven't you? You've taken control of those 2 items and you've achieved them. But what you do need to do is you do need to slot them into your calendar or your diary system. Schedule the time to achieve them, block that time out, and then hold that time. So at least you say, at the end of the day, you can say, well, at least I got the 2 most important things done. The rest of the day might have been a disaster, but I got those 2 things done. And that does give you that little bit of fulfillment and achievement and confidence. Gives you a little bit of confidence that you're making progress.
Now, this might seem like a bit of a stupid question or a silly question, but like it's this idea of that the busy person, they don't create more time, they're better organized. But is that not exhausting? That they're so well organized, they're optimizing every single minute. But
so I think the thing
or
is,
have
look,
I misunderstood? Yeah.
Look, we're not robots, so I don't think you should have every moment of every day scheduled and planned, because that is exhausting. I mean, even feel tired thinking about it. I suppose what I'm saying to you is that you pick periods of your day and you schedule and plan for that, and you're really disciplined about staying focused for that period of time. But I think the way that most people do that is they might pick an hour or 2 in the morning or an hour or 2 in the afternoon. So what you're saying is, so for some number of hours today, I'm going to be really focused. And actually, just by doing that, you'll be amazed by how much more you achieve. But you need to build in breaks. You need to build in some of that quadrant 4, some of that kind of sit back time. So yeah, we're not robots, and you need to acknowledge that. And that's why I'm saying, even it's helpful to know your own energy cycles, know when you're likely to be at your best and when you're likely to be in a bit of a slump, and try and allocate your work accordingly.
There's a question there from Michael. He's asking, are you a Brian Tracy follower? Who I'm not too sure who Brian Tracy is, but Michelle is asking, do you recommend pen and paper or technology for planning?
Brian Tracy is kind of an inspirational guy, and I would support a lot of what he says. In terms of pen or paper technology, it's a fascinating one because actually I think I'd recommend pen and paper. Because pen and paper, I think we're so used to doing everything digitally that actually when you take out a pen and write something down, it triggers a different thought process in your head, I think, because it's different to what you're doing the rest of the time. It's interesting. I work with quite a number of technology companies, and for any of the kind of the programs of activity we do, they're available in kind of pen and paper or digital. And a lot of those tech companies opt for the physical manual. They opt for the paper, which is interesting, isn't it? And the reason they do is for exactly what I say, is all of the rest of the world is there. So when they take out a pen and paper, it actually triggers a different thought process. And I think there is something about physically writing out. It goes into your head in a different way. So I think to answer Michelle, I've answered that in a very lengthy way, haven't I? In a shorter fashion, I think yes, Michelle, go with pen and paper. I think it probably is more effective for most of us. For most of us.
I know we're coming to the end, and but maybe in the last minute you could maybe talk about 2 things. One is the application gap that you referred to, and what is that, and then maybe the takeaways. What do you think people should be doing going forward?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Justin. So the application gap is this idea that there's a gap between what we know we should be doing and what we actually do. And it's kind of a fascinating one because a lot of us, chase new information, chase new concepts. I remember I used to do this, what's happening in London, what's happening in the States, what's happening somewhere else, what are the latest management thoughts and practices. And actually that's all just a distraction, and it's confusing me and stopping me from doing what I know I should be doing. So the basics of good management and good business practice are known to us all. planning, prioritizing, setting goals. Okay, we all know we should do this. Most of us are pretty poor at doing it. And the application gap is the gap between what we know we should be doing, which is setting goals, planning, prioritizing, and what we actually do, which is usually a poor imitation of that. So close that gap. Just focus on the basic stuff and do the basic stuff right. And I think that's the important thing to do.
Brilliant. So I have down on my list of to-dos, so highs and lows, and setting goals for the month, the quarter, and the year. So they're the two activities. I mean,
maybe start by taking the 10 minutes to plan your day and picking 2 things each day. The other thing, why don't you decide that by the end of this week, I will have a draft done of my high payoff activities, so I know what they are. And if I know what they are, they're at the front of my mind, and it keeps me focused. And this is all about focus. Focus brings success. So how can you get yourself more focused?
Listen, Morris, we're nearly out of time, so I just have to make a few announcements to the group there. Listen, thanks very much. It's been really informative. Our up and coming sessions are next week. We're going to be talking to Stuart Wan from Saving for Retirement, Pensions. I know the great big yawn, but really important that people have a think about it and take a bit of a step back around career objectives and focus, taking from Morris today. Managing your office on May the 5th. And cybersecurity on May the 12th, some technology tools, and then why dignity matters at work on May 19th. Just a shout out from Exchange Portal DX Ireland are looking for trialists around their new product. There's some details there. We're sending out a recording of the show today with these slides, so you'll be able to find out more about that. But they're looking for trial users for their new platform, is my understanding. And then just to point out that there are a range of products and services available on the Small Business Hub, practice notes, member benefits, e-newsletters, etc. So just to make people aware of that. So thanks everyone for joining us today. Morris, you've been a great sport. You've given us a real insight into how to plan and be more effective going forward. So thanks again for your time. If anyone has a question, you can contact me here, preferably on email, j.purcell@lawsociety.ie, and I do try and check my voicemail as much as possible. So Morris, thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope everybody else did. Thank you very much. And Slán, and we'll see you next week, hopefully.